today, right now, literally today, you can start taking steps with the different AI products that are out there that can really start future-proofing your business. And I believe, look at it as, how do I make my people more efficient? How do I make my business more resilient?
Yes.
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Drive. Today, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky at the Kain Automotive event with Derek from Numa. Derek, how you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. I am really good. Thank you for having me on this rainy afternoon in Lexington.
I know, right? Yesterday was beautiful. We had a little overcast. This is going to be a great drive. This is probably the rainiest drive podcast we've done so far, but that's
Perfect.
okay.
We're in a safe car, though. We're in a safe car.
We're in a safe car. We are in a Model X full of a tremendous amount of technology, and ironically, we're going to be talking about some pretty amazing technology today. So we're going to get into that. But you know what? I love starting off these podcasts with a little origin story, Derek, because I got to be honest, I'm just fundamentally just fascinated, right? So how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Oddly, I am the second category that you were talking about. So I moved to Auburn, Alabama to go to Auburn University back in 1989, end of 1989, and I had a job lined up with a concession group that managed the concessions for the stadium and Coliseum. Well, when I got there in December, they didn't need me till May, and I was like, well, I got to have a job between now and then.
Got to do something.
So there was a help wanted ad in the paper, and I went in and applied, and it was at a car dealership, and the guy didn't hire me. And then a week later, there was another ad, and it was a blind ad. So I went in and applied. It was the same car dealership. They didn't hire me. And then the third week, there was another ad in the same paper, but this time it was hiring. You had to interview at a hotel.
Oh, okay.
I was like, well, that's weird, but all right. So I went to the hotel. Well, it turned out it was one of those buy your way into the car business deals. Right?
Oh.
So I paid $595 to get trained. I went through 3 days of training, and they brought in the dealership. Guess who it was? It was
exactly.
So the general manager's name was Mark Smith. He walks in and he looks at me and he goes, "Did you make it through the class?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "All right, you're hired." I was like, "Whew," because I just borrowed $595 from a girlfriend's mom. You know, I was 19 to go through this class. And so I got into the business, started selling Dodges, Peugeots, and Winnebagos in Auburn, Alabama.
And Winnebago.
Yep, my very first car I ever sold was a 1989 Dodge Omni. And
an Omni. Now there you go. Now you're kicking it old school. All right.
I'm going all the way back. And so then, I was in the car business. I worked for a consulting company immediately after, that. Well, not immediately, but I started working for a consulting company. We worked all over the Midwest and the Southeast, going in and doing 90-day management contracts. I ended up in Michigan, worked for a long time in Michigan, and left there and went to work for another consulting company, went to work for the Cardone Group, worked for them for about 18 years. And then
it's a good amount of time.
Yep. I went back into retail, and I was a COO for Ziegler Automotive up in the Midwest for a while. And I really enjoyed it. And it was great to see all the things that were happening. And from there, I moved over into the dark side again. I'm back on the vendor side. So I did. And, I'm super excited because my career has spanned so many different things that it's given me a depth and breadth.
You got a little bit of everything, man. You've gone through training and coaching, through dealership operations and sales. And I love the fact that it was kind of this random event, but also slightly conned into it.
Yeah.
They got you into this business. Well,
all I could think was, this guy's not going to hire me, and I'm out $600 that I borrowed from my girlfriend's
I can't imagine seeing him for the third time and
my heart just dropped. I was like, oh, this is it. I done it. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm excited to get into our topic today. It is such a relevant topic. It's a timely topic. AI it's here. And dealers are using it. I think one of the most recent stats I saw through a company is it's still a little less than 5% of dealerships out there are using AI in some form of their operations.
Right.
What you guys are doing at Numa, I think, is really, really cool. And actually, let's kind of start with Numa.
Okay.
What was there was obviously this aha moment, right, where it was like, okay, here's the big problem, and I think this is how we're going to solve it with AI. What was that aha moment for Numa?
So, it's interesting because we're a true Silicon Valley tech company, right? We're backed by Google, backed by the same company that backed Elon Musk for Tesla.
For this thing? Nice.
Yeah. So we're backed by those two companies, and we didn't start out in automotive. So the founders are true Silicon Valley tech geniuses. They sold their last company in 2015, had a really successful exit. They were asked to stay on as an entrepreneur in residence and help other firms coming up in their VC portfolio. And so they did. And Tasso, our CEO and co-founder, while he was watching these other businesses, he realized businesses have a problem with communication. And so that was when he started looking at how can we help the communication issues that small, medium-sized enterprise businesses are faced with today using the current technology. And he's like, we really can't. And so then that was when AI came into it, and we started going down that path. And so our company is over 7 years old. We did not launch in automotive. We've been mainly focused on small and medium-sized businesses up until about 3 years ago.
Okay.
We got found by a Toyota dealer up in Northern California, and he's like, I think this will work. I think this will fix the problem I have in service. And so they went up there and did a time and motion study. At the time, because they had no exposure to automotive, they literally thought an advisor sat at a desk and typed up repair orders. They didn't realize the phone's ringing off the hook. There's somebody standing in front of them constantly. They're clocking 20,000 steps a day because they're at the parts counter. They're out back talking to a tech. Literally, advisors are the busiest, most active people in the entirety of the dealership, and they've got no support.
Yes.
And so when they saw this, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a perfect fit for our AI platform.
Sure.
And so we launched into that, and then they realized that they didn't really have any automotive DNA. They came and got me, and then I brought on our sales team, and we've just been growing gangbusters ever since. So we're super excited because we've got, 6, I guess, of the number one OEM franchises in the US right now that are using our product. We have just rocketed through with a ton of success. Last year, we answered over 8 million calls for dealerships. Wow. Yeah, with our AI product. And when I say answered, that's we called an actual rescue where the AI and the customer were able to communicate, and it was able to put that into a process queue for a human at the dealership to get involved to help with.
Yeah, I saw that, and I thought that was actually a really, really interesting feature. It was taking what was happening in the conversation and then bringing it forward. Huge efficiency, and I definitely want to get into that because I thought that was a really super cool, feature. And I love the fact that you guys are, look, you're not necessarily new kids on the block. You've been around the block a few times,
yes.
Right? And you've tested this in other verticals, and it makes sense to bring it into. And I love the some things just happen for the reason, this very serendipitous approach.
Yeah.
We had this Toyota dealership reach out to us, and it's like,
here we are.
And it was funny because I had a similar thing happen to me. I got into live chat in 2006.
Right.
And I saw it on another website, totally different vertical, nothing to do with this. Reach out to the company, and they're like, "You're a car dealer?" And I was like, that's how I kind of got into live chat. But, I love the fact that you guys took the service advisor approach because you're 100% right. They are the craziest, busiest part of the dealership. And the I guess, expectation of engagement and conversation is insanely high, from the consumer's perspective. I drop my vehicle. I want conversation. I need connection. I need to know what's going on, and I also just need to be able to book appointments and so on. Okay, so let's get into your guys' approach,
yes.
Right? Because I think you guys' approach is significantly different than I think I've seen out there, and I really want to make sure we kind of articulate that kind of during our time. Let's dive into that. What was kind of your guys' approach into the dealership utilizing the tech?
So here's what's interesting. Because our genesis was small, medium-sized businesses, right? That means that we have doctors and lawyers, we have a hospital, we have credit unions, we have insurance brokers, we have dog groomers, right? There's so many different businesses that are using Numa. They built Numa to be extremely customizable, right? Because you can't go into a dog groomer and expect them to do business the same way a hospital does, right? So it have to be able to customize it based upon the deployment. Well, when we got into automotive, what they found, and this is what's really interesting, is that there isn't a single automotive dealership that we set up the same way as the last guy, right? And as we've gone into this, one of the things that happens, and especially for a bunch of our bigger groups that we work with, what they like is the consistent customer experience that they get with Numa and the customization on the back end so that no matter how they function, whether they have an internal BDC, an external BDC, service advisors are taking all the calls. There is a warranty clerk that doubles as an appointment booker, or there is, an operator, right? It doesn't matter how that dealership operates. We can plug Numa into that and create a consistent customer experience, but customize it to the way the dealership does business on the back end.
Gotcha.
And because Numa is so easy to deploy and it's so easy to use, what we find is the uptake on the utilization is instantaneous. We can train a service advisor or a BDC agent how to use it in 20 minutes because it was built to be deployed to hundreds of thousands of users worldwide, right? It wasn't built just to sell to a car guy to solve a specific problem. But now that we've tailored this consistently for the last 3 years, we've got this thing down to a science now.
There's been enough data collected. It's processed enough conversations.
Absolutely.
Where, it can make the right decisions.
It can, and we still, and you and I were talking about this before, but one of the things that I think is I don't know, it's kind of, I'm not going to say fraught with peril, but there's a couple of things that we know about generative AI. Generative AI is powerful.
Yes.
Okay, it's super powerful. However, generative AI should not be deployed on its own without any human oversight, right?
No, 100%. And look, we're an industry of people. That's what we are. And in fact, we say this all the time. We are a people business.
Right on.
And, it makes me cringe a little bit when I see some of these newer AI companies coming out here and they're talking about how, like you said earlier when we were talking, we replace 40% of your staff. It's like, whoa, we're a people business. I'm more interested in how can you empower my people or make them more efficient? And let's go down that rabbit hole. How does Numa empower and, help our people be more efficient?
So there's a couple of things that are really interesting about the way that this works. So I want you to think about it. Let's talk about a BDC, okay? Phone's ringing in the BDC. If the BDC doesn't answer the phone, it's not because they're bad people, it's because they're overwhelmed and the phone's ringing off the hook, right? Scott Davis from Volley showed some interesting statistics and he was talking about the busy times, right? We also track the busy times. And I agree with what he said. 9 to 10 o'clock on a Monday or Tuesday, the phone's ringing off the hook, right? 3 to 4 o'clock on Friday, the phone's ringing off the hook. So when we look at these busy times, the problem with staffing for BDC is that if you get 100 calls in a day, they don't come in 10 calls an hour for 10 hours. You get 30 calls in 45 minutes and then you're behind. Right, and then they're trying to catch up. What happens with Numa, because Numa is actively engaging those customers that the BDC can't answer, either in helping them schedule an appointment or helping them with the status update, but it is always passing that information through to the next available BDC agent so that they're seeing that call live. Literally, I can be on the phone talking to a customer, click on a call that just came in, and I see the whole entire conversation coming across my screen as the customer's talking with the AI. So this is another thing that's really interesting for us, is that we're fully transparent. So whether our AI has a successful conversation or it bombs a conversation, because sometimes it's going to happen, it's clearly, we have a transcript, meaning it's written, and you can click and listen to the audio. And so we break it down into every step of the call, and the AI has all of its parts, and then you can hear the customer's response. And so we are fully transparent, because what the worst thing that can happen, I just slid forward on this thing. The worst thing that can happen is that a customer calls, speaks to the AI, and then a human follows up that call, but they start over from scratch.
No, you're 100% right.
It blows the customer's mind. They're like, why did I tell the AI all that stuff?
It ruins the experience.
100%.
It does. The experience. Here's the fun thing with the experiences. They're going to happen regardless if you're intentional about it or not, right?
Yes.
The other fascinating thing I find about experiences, it's usually not one big problem, that was the situation. It was little things, right? So it's the little things that make and break an experience. And, not feeling like I was known from my previous conversation has always been the monster disconnect. I mean, I was talking a little earlier about live chat, right?
Right.
That's fundamentally one of the biggest problems we have with live chat right now is that, I go online, I'll have this conversation, and then I hit the end button, all right? And that conversation goes poof to the Neverland. And
out in the clouds.
And so now when I come back to re-engage, I have to restart that entire process over again, and that's incredibly frustrating.
Painful.
And it is painful. And
painful.
it ruins an experience that was so far up to this point really good.
Yeah, it's annoying. And how many times have you been on a call with an AI, and you're like operator, representative, 000, agent, help, right? You're doing anything you can to get out of the loop because it's in a loop, and it's tough. And so we strive to do everything that we can to protect the AI from that situation and to escalate that to a human as quickly as possible so that they can get tagged in and they can take care of it. And so that's really a big thing for us. We really look for, we want to empower the humans at the dealership to do a better job talking to their customers.
Yes.
And when I was telling you, we got a benchmark case study from Norm Reeves up on our website. 90 days after they launched Numa, they were able to triple the amount of their outbound phone calls because of the efficiencies that Numa was able to drive across all the conversations, not just appointments, because appointments are a small subset of the calls that are going to ring in. I told you we answered about 8 million phone calls last year. 25% of those unique callers were calling to schedule an appointment. So that means 75% of the calls that we answered had nothing to do with appointments. They were parts, they were body shop, they were status updates. And if a customer has to call for a status update, what have we done? We've already failed that customer.
Yeah, because I'm not proactively reaching out to.
We're not. And so that customer is frustrated. You can have a good repair, which by the way is the bar of entry. Yes. Like people don't bring their car to the dealership expecting a bad repair. They expect it to get fixed. Yes. And so if you have a good repair, but you have bad communication, you're going to get a bad CSI.
100%. Well, I'm actually kind of fascinated, from a conversation perspective. Like I've actually been fascinated with, how well we converse with our clients as dealers for a long time. I mean, when I was a dealer principal, one of the unique things I started to do, and at the time there was no CRM that allowed me to do this, I practically had to do this manually, is I stopped counting the amount of leads I had,
right?
And I started counting how many conversations I had.
What engagement did you have?
Well, exactly, because I can't sell a car or service a car to a name and a phone number, but in a conversation, I can coach through and I can, get my team to become better in their conversations will ultimately lead to more serviced vehicles and more sold cars.
What you just said is probably the core to the entirety of Numa. Mm-hmm. We work around this idea of a conversation. And so everything starts with a conversation.
Yes.
Right? And so at that point in time, what happens with the AI is that it's got this predictive modeling that says, okay, I think that the next step is X, and that's what it's going to set up for the human at the dealership.
Yes.
And bring in all of that information. It's going to bring in a sentiment analysis, the last 24 hours of communication. It's going to give them a workflow. These are the next steps. And so because we work around this concept of a conversation, we're able to actively engage with these people and escalate these conversations when they're not getting handled.
Well, going through the sentiment analysis. Now, look, a lot of people out there may be watching and listening right now and don't know what we mean by a sentiment analysis. So let's go down that rabbit hole.
So one of the things that you can do with AI now is after we've trained our model on these millions of phone calls, the AI can actually look at conversations and gauge the sentiment, meaning how happy is that customer? How frustrated? Are they upset? Where they're at on a scale. And it can actually provide that in an escalation. So if we have a call that comes in where the customer is decidedly unhappy and they are frustrated, that call is going to trigger an escalation to a manager immediately.
See, that's, look, again, talking about little things and how they affect the total experience. That's a big thing. And also, I mean, this is me just putting my dealer principal hat back on or my general manager hat back on and just going like, look, that quickly identifies coaching opportunities for me to better my staff. I mean, come on, everyone out there watching and listening, at some point in time, you've been a manager. The first thing you did when you came in the morning is you grabbed a cup of coffee, you took a big breath, and you prepared yourself to listen to 5 or 10 random conversations that your sales team or your service team had. And as you're listening, oh God, did he just say, what did she just quote him? But like, so I don't have to spend that time. The sentiment analysis can actually identify these key elements.
It does. And today, I'm not saying any service advisor out there ever does this, but they walk back to their desk, the little red light's blinking, they put in their passcode, they put their phone up to their ear, and they're listening, and they have to hit 9 to save, 9 to save, 9 to save, because they got 5 saved messages they haven't done anything with, right?
15, yes.
And so they're hitting save. They get to the one that they need, and they're like, oh, Miss Jones is very upset. All right. And they hit 7, and they write Miss Jones down on a piece of paper. They hit 7, and they delete it. They hang up the phone, and then a customer walks in front of them. So guess who doesn't get called? Miss Jones. Guess what else happens? That voicemail's gone. Nobody knows what happened to it.
Oh, that's true.
They deleted
Great
it.
point, yes.
They deleted it. So you've got no ability to coach. You could hear a call, but you don't hear the voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
So we've actually, with Numa, you can't delete a voicemail. You can't delete a text message. You can't delete a web chat if we were doing web chat. You can't delete anything from the system. So it's always there for that permanent coaching.
So
we've got
coaching and accountability kind of.
yes, we've got dealerships that are actually changing their pay plans based upon the voicemails that are left. So if they have more than 3 status update voicemails in a week, guess what happens? They get paid on a different scale.
So
It's opening up the eyes, and I say that we're kind of shining a light into that closet that has been very dark in regards to communication for many years. So that puts us in a different place. And with the sentiment analysis, now we're able to kick it to the next level by saying, uh-oh, this needs to be escalated before this customer gets all the way out into the giggly weeds, right?
Well, because if I could have, and I think of this because I was a service manager at one point, and you break down whatever the miscommunication was, right?
Yes.
You look at like, okay, the different steps. Okay, we called back then. Okay, well they emailed us. Well, he was off that day, so then he didn't get back to. So I start to map out the breakdown.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't. I mean, because you're analyzing the conversations in real time, creating these notifications or these, running up the flag process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have. I can get into it before. Because normally, as a service manager, I would get involved at the end of it.
Right. It's already to the escalation point where the customer's already over the top.
Exactly. They're already over the top, and now I'm looking at going, okay, how am I going to save this customer? How am I going to make this right?
Mm-hmm.
But so like instead, this is what to me, I know this sounds like a little thing, but this is probably one of the biggest value propositions I see in your guys' solution is that I am able to insert myself in real time, not have to wait until I got to go use some of my goodwill money, to make this individual happy again. I'm actually getting that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and there's an interesting stat that shows that if you resolve a customer's complaint in a way that they find positive, they will be like 95% happy, and they will tell 6 or 7 people.
Wow.
And
that's true.
If you look at this from the standpoint of how can we future-proof our business, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways to start thinking about that is you have to maximize what you're doing with AI today, right? Because the dealerships that are getting into this and are figuring out how it works with their processes today are going to be ahead of the game in 6, 12, 18 months.
100%.
So this isn't just about us. This is about any AI. And then when we look at it, one of the things that we talk about all the time is how do you build an AI native dealership? Right?
Yes.
And so what does an AI native dealership even look like? And our CEO is actually planning for 3 to 5 years out from today in regards to how we're approaching this whole concept of the AI native dealership. But we're talking about technicians, and we're talking about, title clerks, and we're talking about all of these repetitive things that Gen AI can really, truly help take to the next level. And so what does that look like, and how do we get there? And that's really the future proofing that we're after. But today, right now, literally today, you can start taking steps with the different AI products that are out there that can really start future proofing your business. And I believe, look at it as, how do I make my people more efficient? How do I make my business more resilient?
Yes.
When you service lag sales by about 8.
And how would I create that better experience?
Exactly.
That holistic better experience.
Yep. So service lag sales by about 18 months. So even if we have a downturn in sales or whatever, we're still going to continue to see growth in our service drives for, 18 months minimum after that. And what is crazy to me is that almost every dealership I talk to, I'm down a service advisor. I'm down a BDC agent. I'm down a parts counter person, right? The staffing turnover today is higher than it's ever been. The challenge with hiring and training is harder than it's ever been. And so what we need to do is drive efficiencies in these different places using the technologies that are available to us to make them so that they can do their job better. And truly, that's what we're after.
Well, and it's that empowerment. I come back to the empowerment portion of it, right? Like, it's just like, no, look, I love the efficiency portion of it because, for me, a process is only as good as how well we can measure its efficiency.
Amen.
And, how often have we used it, especially in the fixed ops department? We got to process our way to profitability. We're going to process our way to a better experience. And that is the truth of the matter of it, right? But, I think one of the hardest things we've ever had is how do we measure the effectiveness of, that process? I remember my servicemen, some of my service advisors maybe fundamentally didn't like me for some reasons. I made them stand up when they answer phones.
Right.
I know that's a silly one. That's totally like old school, but
No,
it was
effective.
It was the tonality difference between when you're hunched over and you're sitting down in a chair. It's just those types of little things. And, so like if I put out, kind of this process, of whatever changes I wanted to make in, the way that we answer the phones or the way that we were handling appointments, this system allows me to measure it, but then also put a safety net almost kind of behind it to ensure that the process is being executed.
Right. That's 100%. That's 100%. And, it's interesting. We joke about it, but, AIs work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't call in sick, right? They
don't have bad days.
They don't have bad days. They are consistent. One of our OEM partners did an analysis of our dealerships.
Yeah.
Our dealerships had more of what they call zero visit bookings than any other dealerships. And here's why. Scott Davis was showing a bunch of stats with Volley. They've answered their
25 million
calls, right?
Yes.
And so he was showing the stats. 68% of the people that called and left a voicemail and didn't get a call back, I don't remember if he said 15 minutes or what the number was, never came back to the dealership.
Wow.
So we know that 15 minutes is the sweet spot. And so if I call in, look, I just bought this car, right? And if I call in and I'm like, oh, I need an oil change, and I call a dealership and you don't respond within 15 minutes, what do?
Yes.
I pull into Pep Boys or, Uncle Luther's oil change or whatever it is right there on the side of the road. And I lose that customer for life. And that's all it takes to drive defection. When we look at it with the OEM partners, the one thing that we see consistently is we don't lose customers over a warranty repair. We lose them over basic maintenance. And as a dealer, that is our lifeblood. And retention drives sales. And the higher we can have our service retention, guess what happens? The higher we're going to have as far as our sales loyalty.
I'm glad that you brought up retention because, there are things, there are ripple effects of what has happened over the last few years. And, one of those ripple effects, let's talk about the variable side, is leasing. Leasing's down as an industry.
Oh, yeah.
Over 37%.
Huge. Yeah.
Now, yes, we're feeling that crunch now, but it's that ripple effect that we're going to feel over the, for a lot of brands out there, for a lot of dealerships out there, that was their built-in loyalty, their built-in retention.
Absolutely.
Was this lease return.
Absolutely.
And, so loyalty and retention is not going to come necessarily from leasing on the variable side. It has to come from the fixed ops side, and it's every little thing. I mean, look, I know BDCs out there. I've helped build, I've helped design, I've helped coach BDCs of all different kinds and sizes and stuff like that. And the demand on BDCs are huge. And this is kind of like bringing in kind of that AI helper that's just gonna have that catch-all kind of model to make sure there's no conversation left behind.
Yeah, I like that, no conversation left behind. I don't know who it is. One of the Silicon Valley tech firms has a slogan. It's like, I don't know, customer success is a team sport or something like that. Mm-hmm. But we say communications is a team sport. Where because if I can't take that call, what's going to happen, right?
Exactly.
Does it just sit there and get aged out, or do we have a process in place where somebody else can jump in, communicate with that customer, and make sure that we don't end up losing them? And so it's wild. The other part, we were talking about communication, but we have there's a lot of parts of the United States where it's not that big of a deal, but we have a large non-native English speaking contingent that are driving cars in America right now. Mm-hmm. And so Numa can communicate in over 100 different languages. And so we're seeing, Mandarin Chinese, we're seeing Russian, French. We have clients in Minnesota that we're seeing Hmong all the time.
That is just
it's
totally cool.
It's largest Hmong population in the world is in Minnesota besides Cambodia. And so, it's wild. And so we're able to empower dealership employees to communicate in English on their side with the customer in their language that they're comfortable with on their side. And we see service advisors using the Numa app out in the shop and texting with the customers texting them in Indian, and they go back to their desk, they copy and paste the customer's translation into the dealership for the complaint on the RO, and they're like, it just saved me, I don't even know how many minutes of trying to communicate this with the customer.
Look, I mean, the bottom line is, AI is here. It's available for dealers. It's efficiency, it's empowerment. I'm still surprised at the percentage of dealers. Like I said, last study I heard was under 5% of dealerships are utilizing AI in some form. I've been super impressed with what you guys have put together.
Thank you.
If for anybody out there watching, listening right now, if you're not utilizing an AI, or even if you are and you want to just see what else is out there, I really encourage you to check out Numa when you have a minute. I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time today, but before I let you go on this beautiful rainy day,
hey, we didn't crash. We're doing great.
We didn't crash, and the self-driving was it? I don't know, maybe. Anyways, for anybody out there watching, and listening right now, who would love to connect, learn more about Numa, and just maybe even just yourself, what's the best way to do so?
It's super easy. Just go to the website numa.com, numa.com, and do the requested demo and say that you saw it on Jason's podcast, and we'll take care of you. Awesome. I get all those that come in, so I see them as they come across, and we'll absolutely take care of you. And look, here's you said it. The 5% is probably a total, right? Mm-hmm. I was just sitting here doing the rough math. If you just look at service appointment agents, right, for helping book service, mm-hmm. it's probably, and I'm gonna give you a pretty real number. It's probably in about 1,500 dealerships right now. Not just ours, like with Brooke and Stella and Blink and Auto Service AI and any of the other competitors that are out there that are doing it. It's probably out there. Now, some of the scheduling tools are starting to offer an AI agent and things like that. And again, I highly encourage you to take a look at what AI can do for the dealership and start thinking about, what do I need to do to be an AI native dealership? Because that's going to be the critical piece. Exactly. What do you need to do, all right, to be a native AI dealership? Yep. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode. We appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.